to be posted to our website and social media and YouTube page, so you can share with any family and friends who cannot make it today. So welcome for those of you who I've not met yet. Great to meet you. My name is Sonia. I'm the gallery director here at Hera, and it's great to see some familiar faces in this open call that was our largest open call to date. So it was even better that I knew some of you and that some of you have been in our open calls before. So congratulations on this amazing show. So what we'll do for the virtual talk is that I will flip through this slideshow alphabetically. For those of you who are here, I'll announce your name and you can go ahead and tell us more about your work. We'll save all questions for the end of the call. So just write down, make a note, and we'll save those for the end of the call and have an open Q&A. And for those of you who are not here, I will read your artist statement that you sent me so we can still hear a little bit more about your work. For those of us who aren't here to see the show in person and read about it on our own. I would love to open the talk with our juror statement from Lydia Gordon, our amazing juror. She's not able to be with us today. She is traveling as well. It's a super busy time of year, but we're so grateful for all of these amazing pieces that she was able to put together from over 400 entries. So Lydia Gordon is a specialist in modern and contemporary art at the Peabody Essex Museum, and she is the coordinating curator for the nationally touring and critically acclaimed exhibition Jacob Lawrence, The American Struggle, in Hans Hofmann, The Nature of Abstraction. Gordon is curator of Vanessa Platasis, Taking Place, a long-term site-specific painting installation. Her book publication projects include Jacob Lawrence, The American Struggle, and Inappropriate Bodies, Art, Design, and Maternity. Gordon's writing can be seen in Hyperallergic Art News and Boston Art Review. She's also Associate Professor of Modern Art History at Montserrat College of Art. And Lydia wanted me to share with all of you a thank you to the entire Hera Gallery team, and most importantly, the artists, for this opportunity to be with your work and this theme. These posed questions surrounding issues of age, memory, and cycles have been at the forefront of my own mind over the past 2 years, as it has been difficult to pinpoint certain experiences, conversations, months, days, etc. For me, emotions have played a large part in marking my own memory. Feelings seem to carry over passages of time and have powerful qualities of transportation and reflection. I was inspired by all of you in this regard and felt deep, visceral responses to works across medium, approach, content, and scale. To each artist, thank you for bringing me on a journey through a moment in time. May you continue to work in ways that bring forth new conversations, perspectives, critiques, and celebrations of our shared community. So thank you, Lydia. And now we can open it up with Sarah Allen in your triptych that we have here.
Okay. I haven't participated in this before, so this is new, but and actually it's the first time I've seen them hung. I was wondering if there would be more images showing up on Instagram, because there's just that one trip through. I didn't know whether I wanted to try to show friends, you know, through connection to Instagram. Anyway, this is part of a series that I have been doing over the past 2 years that started with a series of black and white images as I pondered the isolation during the pandemic, of my life during the pandemic. And then as I am 80 and have been interested in the past few years in trying to find ways of showing aging, I turn to these high contrast images to explore my own body in images that are specifically connected with aging, although they also have other connotations. So I'm hoping to see more than just a literal image, but a sense perhaps of metaphor communicating something stronger and more varied than just than simply age.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yes, there will be more images on Instagram coming for the rest of the duration of the exhibition. So for everyone who's thinking that too. Next we have Chandra. Chandra, are you with us today? Okay. So Chandra says, in my art practice, I paint vivid imagery of underrepresented women motivated by generational events, stories, and community. In reflection of my personal and collective experiences as a woman of color, I utilize various techniques and materials. My explorative approach expresses the dynamic nature and emotional landscape of the female form. In the process of creation, I start with a story, social or political incident that sparks a visual vision in the perspectives of the women that are affected. Whether these stories are filled with the pain or joy, I capture the essence of the feminine spirit radiating from within. Victoriously basking in vibrant compositions, I incorporate organic forms, nature, and symbolism to reflect expressions of this internal beauty. Mirror of Life is a retrospect of older women who mask themselves in many ways to distract, share, or notice. Okay. Next, we have Michelle Kendall Bonner.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Hera Gallery and Juror Lydia Gordon for including my work in this really wonderful show. A lot of my work is made with recycled and found materials and sort of daily detritus. And I'm always looking to find the hidden message and the beauty in these things. This particular piece is sort of like Sarah's piece, looking at my aging hair. As my hair is going white, I have been collecting it since 2013 and just watching it. And it's a very subtle change, but it's really interesting to see. And it's an ongoing project, like many of my projects, that I will continue working on for a long time. I hope. That's the hope. And this piece was funny because I have two ways of working. Sometimes I know exactly what I want to do, and it's just a matter of finishing the puzzle. In this piece, I started making these nesting baskets, not really knowing why or what I was doing, but I just kept at it. And then one day I was driving and I realized, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I need to make 18 of them. And this was the summer before my son went off to college. And I realized this was just the T-shirts are teenagers' ubiquitous clothing, but I needed to make one basket for every year that he'd been at home. And this was also my sort of expression of empty nesting. And it's wonderful to look at for me because I instantly go back to sending him off to college. And so a lot of the work is social commentary or it's deeply personal. And that's my story.
Thank you so much. These are so wonderful. We're so happy to have them here. Next, we have Laura Lee Brady. I believe you're with us.
Hi. So this piece is a portrait of my father, my niece, and my newborn daughter. And the idea was to show 3 different stages of life, encompassing kind of like the fragility of old age, the vitality of youth, and then the newborn that kind of possesses both of those qualities at the same time. So my dad is a cancer survivor, and that's a stoma that in his throat that he breathes through. And I think in the painting, that kind of speaks to the vulnerability of aging, especially when you see it next to the girls and their liveliness. I was also reflecting on the preciousness of that relationship and that time spent together as a family, in light, especially of the past 2 years with the pandemic. thinking about how the elderly were at high risk, and especially my dad with his medical complications. And we heard all these stories of grandparents being isolated from their grandchildren to protect themselves from the virus. And I was thinking about all the time lost there. I know we had some time lost in that relationship ourselves. And I chose to use very high key saturated colors to sort of bring out that sense of vibrancy and exuberance of youth. And also to highlight that in my dad as well. I was really influenced by Alice Neal's portraits. I'm a huge fan. It's a huge inspiration. And I was also, for this piece, looking at a lot of Fauvist artists, Fauvist painters like Matisse for their use of color and brushwork. And as I was working on this, I had a quote in mind by the painter Grace Hartigan, that a work of art is the trace of a magnificent struggle. And I really love that quote. I really related to it, especially with this piece, because the process of making this was a real struggle for me, because it was an experiment in style. It's a very large piece. And when I started making it, I just felt like something wasn't working. So I ended up just putting away all of my paints and all my brushes and just putting it away for like a month, and didn't think about it, just sitting in my studio. And then when I came back to it, I sat down and I finished it in one sitting. I just kind of let the paint lead and resisted the urge to fix anything, and allowed it to just keep that spontaneous, intuitive kind of feeling. So for me, it was kind of a process of letting go and accepting what the piece itself was leading me to. So yeah, thank you for including my work. I'm so grateful to be a part of the show. It's a wonderful show.
So much, Laura. It's great to have you back at Hera. And I just want to point out on my screen, the lime green box is around you right now. With your hot pink shirt, you look just like you're painting. Great. Good plan. Okay. Next we have Stephen Brigidi.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy to be a part of this collective exhibition. I think it's always fascinating to respond to a call, which I don't do very frequently, and to see really what the end result is, what the curator comes up with. So I did attend the opening. I was real happy to be a part of things. The photograph that was selected as I responded to the passage of time as a theme is something, it's not new, not recent, from 2006. It's from some of my travels. Happened to be on the Azore Islands, the island of San Miguel. Circumstances that brought me there was a commission, as I've supported myself a lot through some commercial photography and teaching over the years to allow for the fine art. The commission was to document a family reunion in the Azores in San Miguel. And in most travel times, there's an opportunity to do personal work, which this particular kind of 10-day, 12-day trip was, as I recall. So I was able to go off on my own with the aid of someone who could translate for me, because there was very little English spoken, but I'm Italian, so I was able to actually communicate with a lot of the folks in Italian. They seemed to understand me pretty well, but I couldn't understand them in return. So that was something that was not necessarily a barrier at all. This particular photograph was made in the small fishing village of Rabo di Pesce. And I was documenting some of the various people and the workings of the town. And I really was taken by this one doorway. And as we approached, again, with the aid of my translator, the woman came out, and right away it was one of those rare aha moments, in a sense, because in the nearly 50 years of photography, I probably experienced it maybe a couple of dozen times when you feel the photograph is going to be one of the so-called good ones. And I was happy to come away with this. Subsequently, I was invited into the house and conversed with the mother and her daughter. Her daughter was, her charge in life was to take care of her mom. And I was happy to share, a brief few moments with them. We exchanged just some goodwill back and forth. And seeing the photograph as it was developed with film a few weeks later, was happy that the results were there and the aha moment kind of came through. That was one among hundreds of photographs done. In any event, happy to have it in this exhibition, the expression of time, two different generations, and the care between mother and daughter, and the affection that was there. Thanks very much.
Stephen. Next, we have Amy Broderick with 2 pieces.
Good evening, everyone from South Florida. It is such a pleasure to be with you tonight, and such a treat to be able to see everyone's work and hear everyone speak about it. My work embodies my interest in noting the specific topography of everyday life while attempting to hold fast to those daily details that get lost to the fleetingness of time. Close observation and carefully recorded moments bring order out of the chaos and hopefully elegance out of the mundane. These 2 images articulate the transience of time juxtaposed against the materiality of daily life. I am the mom of 2 little boys, and this image, Mangroves, is an image of the 2 of them in the wetlands near our home. And the other image, Mate, is an image of the top of the head of my youngest as I wrapped him in towels. And both of these images really illustrate my interest in trying to anchor moments or anchor memories that demonstrate the pivoting of mothers toward their children and the pivoting of all caregivers toward the ones they take care of, as well as the pivoting of the ones we take care of away from us. In the case of my boys, as they get bigger and the little top of that little head isn't so little as it was in this photo, and it keeps getting higher and higher and will one day soon go well beyond my eye level. And in the other image where the boys are clambering around in the mangroves, it's an example of how some of my proudest moments as a mom are the ones where they move farthest away from me, and how success as a caregiver when you're caring for children is often teaching children the independence to move away from your care or to relate to your caregiving in a different way. So these are my images really reflecting on the quick passage of time and the way those caregiving relationships are always in flux.
Thank you so much, Amy. Next, we have Lauren, who can't be with us tonight, with her piece, Carmela's Afghan. Lauren says, inspired by my great-grandmother Carmela's Afghan, I wanted to use the same process she used over 60 years ago and crochet a blanket as if we were together. As a fibers artist, I began creating to comfort me in this turbulent time, and as a result made a granny square Afghan. I've always wanted one and never made something as simple as a blanket for myself. My materials were all sourced from my grandmother's scrap yarn bins, adding another layer of connection throughout each stitch in this blanket. Recently, she has passed, and I hold these materials closer now more than ever. For hours on end, I created this Afghan based on descriptions and pictures of ones my great-grandmother created. This blanket was simply an act of self-care during a time where that was most needed. 3 days after the blanket was finished, a distant cousin reached out to me and sent along 2 pieces of one of my great-grandmother's Afghans. Being able to touch the yarn that she worked with 60 years prior is an indescribable feeling. I never get a chance to meet her, but this piece is collaborative and healing, which I need now more than ever. A beautiful installation. Thank you, Lauren. Next, we have Sharon.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I just absolutely lost your, hold on, the Zoom. Oh, here we are. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much for including me in the show. It's really exciting to be part of this. I have two images in the show. They're from two different bodies of work. This one is called Helen, and it is part of a woman's portrait project that I started a couple of years ago, which is called See Me, Consider Me, I Won't Be Erased. And my goal for this series of portraits was to create introspective images that try to reveal something about the inner life of each subject. And in making these images, I'm also looking to challenge the notion of the male gaze. And the male gaze for me is the way in which men look at women and the many ways in which women are stereotyped and objectified in our culture. We tend to be seen as sexual objects or as insignificant beings, or we're not even noticed or considered at all. And I find this to be especially true as women get older and are made to feel somewhat invisible. That earlier image of Helen was part of this series where I wanted to sort of give women their due. And I had found this quote from Rebecca Solnit that sort of sums up what this portrait is about and what this whole project is about. And it's from her book, which is entitled Men Explain Things to Me. And it says, goes like this: some women get erased a little at a time, some all at once, some reappear. Every woman who appears struggles with the forces that would tell her story for her or write her out of the story, the genealogy, the rights of man, the rule of law. The ability to tell your own story in words or images is already a victory, already a revolt. And then the other portrait that I've got in the show, it's called Time is an Illusion. And there it is. It's a self-portrait that I made in the summer of 2020. And this portrait was my attempt to visually portray my feelings of solitude and isolation that were all brought on by the pandemic. But I was also interested in addressing the idea of time and like how slow and surreal the days felt in the early months of the pandemic before there was even a vaccine available and people were staying inside. And I felt like time seemed warped and malleable and each day blended into the next. And then another idea that I wanted to express in this photograph was my need to escape. I felt like escaping from the fears about the pandemic, and I was also trying to escape from the politics of the time. This was before the 2020 election and everything was crazy and I was just completely overwhelmed. And so by putting in the antique clock and staging it this way, I kind of wanted to make it feel like I was existing in another time and place, not really in the present. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Next, we have Rachel Green with Barbie Potato Head.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for hosting this exhibition and this event. I've really enjoyed hearing about everyone's work so far and look forward to hearing from everyone else. This piece is a piece that is part of a series I call Toys for My Middle Age. And in these pieces, I combine found objects, and discarded technologies that combine the idea of ask the question, what's work and what's play. So with these pieces, I put these things together, things that are familiar to people in an attempt to engage them in the work. So this particular one, I take a walking cane and turn it into a push toy and sort of ask the questions about what can be used for fun and what can be used for aid. I was inspired by an article I was reading on, just scrolling through, and it was some study. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but it had a study about little girls who played with Mr. Potato Head versus little girls who played with Barbies. So being a child of the 60s, this created questions in my mind. So I decided to combine the two. So I take the Barbie and I put the potato head on top, and then I put her on a dance floor. And I like the idea of taking irons, which you usually think about as a way of work, and turning them to fun things. So I made an iron a part of the push toy. And then I put my son's ray gun on top. And it actually responds to sound. So it lights up, the dance floor will light up, and you can pull the trigger on the ray gun and it shoots. So by combining these, I make people feel differently or think differently about objects and technology and what disability is. And also ask questions about these things we were been taught about what the value of, a woman is and what her role in society is, and sort of combine them in a way that's kind of humorous and trying to get people to look at their lives in a different manner. And sort of looking beyond the idea of trying to possess things and fear of the future, and going back to the idea of play and imagination and creativity. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I would love to read that potato head Barbie girl. I still have it. Next we have Jerry Hahn.
Good evening. Thank you so much for including my work in this wonderful exhibition. This piece is called "How Long Can I Stand on One Leg Before I Fall into Infirmity?" I am the ballet dancer, and I will be 77 next week. And in the last 3 years, I have discovered that I had aches and pains in body parts that I had just taken for granted for years. I almost didn't know my feet were there because they didn't hurt. So I think it's, for me, pain is very, very pointy. It's very sharp, and I'm keeping it together, but I've only been a professional artist for the last 7.5 years. I am a synesthete. I have always drawn and made art because it is a place that I can go and it gives me comfort. I see every sound I hear, so it's like being in a sandstorm of stimulus. But when I am art making, I'm in a quiet room with air conditioning and cold drinks, and it's that kind of like total comfort experience in art making. I usually make pieces based on sound, but this is one of my, what I consider my pattern recognition pieces. I work in fabric primarily now, silk and silk on linen, all hand embroidered, all hand stitched. And it gives me a tremendous amount of comfort to just, do the work, to hand stitch. It's just a great place for me to go in my head. And to give myself a plug, the Vice Media came to visit me last month and spent 8 hours interviewing me. And as of 11 o'clock on Saturday, something's going to go live. A documentary about me and my synesthesia is going live. So that's the story, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm looking forward to watching that. Next we have Sarah Haskell. Sarah, are you here with us? Sarah is on a boat and may or may not have Wi-Fi.
That's interesting.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Ooh. Sarah, welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
Is my video working?
Yep, we can see you, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm on a boat. I'm in Branford, Connecticut. Boat's actually broken down, so hooray. Yeah, so this piece was a community art piece called Well Used, Well Loved. And it was a collaboration with about 40 households who adopted a dish towel, and I asked them to reflect on different questions that I posed to them over the period of about 6 months about aging And I asked them to use the dish towel and watch it age and think about how sometimes we hold things precious and sometimes we think things that are old are not beautiful. And so the questions were about that. And simultaneously, there were several people who not only adopted the dish towel, but who wrote responses to the questions that I posed to them on this special paper. So they would respond to the questions on this paper, and then later it was either spun into thread by themselves or by me. And so the two side panels, the image that you see on the right, is all of their text that was spun into thread and woven into the piece. And the two center large panels show the two hands, which in my mind are, you know, a symbol of our human body aging. And then the red thread that separates, I mean, that joins us all together on this. So it was an amazing project to work with this community of households, and I'm grateful for my work being included in the show. So thank you. There's a very long blog about the piece. You can find it on wellusedwelllovedblogspot.com, and it's just a lot more depth about the project there. So thank you.
So much, Sarah. So happy you could join us today.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad I could be here.
Great. Next, we have Judith Not My Knee.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be back in another Hera Gallery Juried show. And this time, what I submitted was very different than what I usually do. Most of my work basically falls under the category of reality in flux. I started off doing street photography and architectural photography when it was possible to travel to New York and DC and Dublin on a regular basis. But since COVID, my travels have been limited, and my work has basically focused on abstracts and geometrics, which were part of the previous work, but not as formal as they are now. However, this image is a throwback to my earlier work. It's my granddaughter when she started to lose her baby teeth, and I was there, and she was just thrilled at the transition to the next stage. And even though I had not thought about it before, Cartier-Bresson's The Decisive Moment all of a sudden hit me. And that's, to me, what this image became. So thank you.
Next, we have Nora Lloyd, who's not with us today, but I will read her statement for her piece, Elder Sharing Knowledge. It says, traditional cultures have always held elders in high esteem. Decades on the earth add layers of wisdom meant to be passed on to the next generations. Unlike many contemporary cultures, getting older is recognized as a learning process to be valued, as older elders become the keepers of tribal or family stories. Thank you, Nora, for sharing this piece with us. And next we have Paul Rogers. Paul, I believe you're here with us today.
Hello?
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I was having some technical issues. Yeah, so just real quick, yeah, thank you all for including me in this. And I've been working with old postcards for a while. These are mostly antiques, over 100 years old. And kind of making a decorative image from these kind of historical documents. And in that way, it's probably a little bit subversive when we think about these as these really special things that had been discarded and left in antique malls for people to come and buy in mass quantities. I think in the end, the finished product kind of feels like maybe a conversation over the phone that is on a bad connection, so that you're just getting little pieces and parts of these texts that were written from people who have all passed on now. So in that way, maybe thinking about how we have these incomplete notions of the past, and whether it's our own history or collective history, thinking about how we pretty much routinely try to reconstruct that story from this deficit of information that we have, and what that does when we try to solve a puzzle with a lot of missing parts. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Next we have Fouad Syed Mahamadi. Sorry if I said that wrong. Fouad asked me to read his statement for tonight. He says, the self-care routine in the Kurd culture, where women before any get-together, party, or event undergo a beautifying process, especially taking care of old people and preparing them for any events, are a part of their common courtesy and social conventions. Threading hair removal is what you can appreciate in this photograph. They also color their hair with henna and add makeup. These documentary photos, called Fairies, show empathy and respect for aging in Kurd culture in the northwest of Iran. Thank you so much for sharing this image with us. And next we have Tina.
Hi, thanks for including me in the show and for all of the things all of you have been sharing with us. This piece is the first in a series of still lives that I made. It actually was made from a water glass that I had inherited from my maternal grandmother. And it accidentally broke, and I saved the pieces and was in my studio and thinking about, you know, how do you preserve history, and how do you preserve relationships, and you know, and when does something go from being a, you know, sacred object in your personal life to being, you know, something that is no longer useful. So I made it into a photograph, which started a whole series that spanned through the pandemic, and it became a real reflection about family and friendship and issues that were happening in 2020, issues around social justice and you know, health and the confined space of the pandemic. So I worked on this very small table that I have in my studio that became this kind of enclosed space that each image was constructed on. And you know, I think of photography all the time as being about the passage of time. And I don't often work in still life, but each of these moments that I was creating was reflecting on kind of our separation from each other during the COVID time, which hasn't entirely passed us by. But so, yeah, that's all I have to say, I guess. Thank you so much.
And next we have Lily, who's not here with us today. She asked me to read, I use printmaking as a way to hold onto memories, people, and places I can no longer tangibly hold or experience. Sometimes this means taking a memory and including every little detail I can remember from it, dragging in elements to help emphasize the importance of the moment. Sometimes it means appreciating the simplicity and peacefulness of it. My process begins with pictures of the people, places, and moments I want to create an etching about. Often I collage the images together or use a picture as my main reference, adding little details I can remember from moments with that person or in that place as I draw into my plate. My memories of these places and people feel like a fantasy to me. I try to emphasize that with the intricate details I add into my prints, every little detail has meaning to me in some way. I want people to be able to get lost in my prints the same way I get lost in them while creating them, feeling surrounded by undying memories. Thank you, Lily. And next we have Cynthia Zeman.
Hi, I'd also like to thank you for including me in this exhibit. It's been really a wonderful experience. This is a digital collage of a picture of my roommate and I when we were both 20, living in the East Village, and sort of learning how to live on our own and learning how to living with the tension of how we were raised versus how we wanted to live as artists. And then on top of that is a bridal lamp that I actually own now, sort of as a symbol of the tension between the desire for freedom and matrimony and a home life and all these things that I was raised to think that women were supposed to do. It was a time for me of real creative freedom. And when thinking about this exhibit, I just keep thinking about this time period of my life and what were the circumstances that allowed me to sort of explore all these different creative avenues and how I can get back to that. I'd love to cycle back to that time where everything was art 24 hours a day. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I believe our last artist today is Jane Sick. Jane says, this piece circles around the stages of a woman's life, including girlhood, adolescence, young woman, mother, middle-aged woman, and old woman, each with her own relationship with nature. My paintings are based on imagery from the unconscious that arise while I am immersed in the painting process, so I never know in advance what the final painting will be. My work is highly intuitive and feeling-based with strong psycho-spiritual elements. They tend to be about interior realities. Aging figures often occur as an expression of deepening awareness of a human being's place in the world, a sort of gnosis born from the passage of time, the accumulation of experience and recognition of past errors. But these aged figures also occur as symbols of transformation and transcendence. Sometimes they stand in for inner guidance, what we might call wisdom. And that concludes all of our speakers for today. So I'd like to open it up to a Q&A. So you can unmute yourself and ask away. And I have a few questions I'd like to ask as well, but I can wait to the end. We can hear from everyone else. Or I can go first, but my real burning question, I have a few really burning questions, but I guess what's really on my mind is the theme of the grandmothers is really shining in this exhibition, and I think that is really interesting. I believe 2 artists in the show were in our show Doe, the other National Juried exhibition we had in October, and the underlying theme of that exhibition also turned out to be grandmothers and this idea of matriarch. So I am wondering how our artists feel, how that idea of matriarch plays with the passage of time and how it seems to be so dominant in these 20 pieces that were out of 450 entered.
Well, since I think I'm the only present one that has actual grandmother link. I think a lot about the intergenerational quality or structure of my family. I'm the youngest grandchild, and my father was the youngest child of 13. And so the generation kind of spans very widely. And my paternal grandmother, I didn't know at all. So the grandmother who owned this glass was someone I grew up with till I was a young teenager when she passed. But just thinking about the things people leave behind, the things people accumulate in their lifetime, the fragility of all of that, you know, the way that it could then become an object that I own and how it reflects on my lifestyle, where it is in time right now. All of those things I was thinking about while making this image. You know, and I'm very grateful to my ancestors for bringing me here on this journey. And I often think about how, as artists, like we connect to the past, and as a photographer, it's something I do all the time. Like every photograph becomes a record of time passing. So thank you.
Thanks, Tina. This is a very heavily dominated photography show, which I think is also really interesting. And I feel like it's almost an even split between fiber pieces and photography pieces, primarily. So I would love to hear from our artist how photography works as, like Tina just said, as like a capturing of that passage of time and those fleeting moments, and how fibers do that as well.
As a fiber artist, I had a mother and a grandmother and aunts who knitted and crocheted and were busy doing handwork, embroidery and lace making, which I sadly never learned any of their skills. But in part because of that exposure, to have been surrounded by creative women over a long life. And also in part because of my experience with the church, with liturgical vestments, which were often beautifully embroidered with silks and just beautiful fabrics. Those have been some of the influences. And then I think about the anonymous women who've created particularly liturgical vestments over the long, long years, who were never acknowledged, who put in thousands of hours. I mean, my work takes between 75 and 150 hours, depending upon how big a piece it is. But I think about all those women who did all that work over these long years, or the ones who just simply made clothes over the very long years. I feel like part of this wonderful long line of people who have done this kind of work, and it's very, very satisfying.
It's interesting to me that mine is less about the passage of time in relation to other people, but about my own experience as I reached 80, and finding that I started by looking at my hands and the lines and the brown spots a few years ago, and I thought they're interesting. I like the texture, I like the changes. I don't find the aging ugly. I find it interesting, and of course you don't very often see your back. Then it was in the process of learning more about photography itself and trying to figure out how to capture these images in ways that were interesting. I'd be interested in the textures. I'm interested obviously in the shapes, but also to make it clear that this is not, woman as a young person or in any way related to how men look at us. It's just kind of an exploration of where I am now, since I don't have all those I don't have very many people in my family, and the family that is my children and their children. So it's kind of an exploration of where I am now in the present.
And I think that's interesting because my photography now is an exploration of where I was and
Yes,
trying to
right.
reconnect with that and use that energy that I had then versus now. So I think it's really interesting that you're sort of documenting the now, and I'm like taking a walk down memory lane in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the now has actually been extraordinarily energizing. I have not been considered an artist. I took up photography in retirement, and this is the first time I've really delved deeply. I've had a lot of experiments, but this was new and highly energizing. I feel like a new person. Actually.
Well, I feel like highly energized also just because that girl in those photos was super energetic, and I just feel like she's coming back somehow, and I'm happy to see her.
Yeah.
Sarah, your photographs are just beautiful, just so beautiful.
Thank you.
And they've done something for me in that I happen to be happily married to a man for 42 years who thinks I'm wrinkling nicely. And really, he says that to me. He says, "Oh, you're wrinkling so nicely." And I thought he was kind of goofy, crazy. And then I looked at your work and I went, "Oh, yes. Older women are wrinkling nicely. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
So you've changed my point of view about myself. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this hair.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I hope it's at some point it becomes completely white.
Yeah.
That's my goal. But I don't know how many years it'll take.
I was Snow White at age 40. So I had hair like that when I was like 16.
I'm 62 and counting, and still not enough white.
Yeah.
I really love to point out the very strong feminist themes that come through in this exhibition. I always think it's really interesting at Hera Gallery. For those of you who know about us, we were born in second wave feminism and have been troopers for the past 50 years in that direction. And I think it's just interesting and even more powerful when we have these jury shows that we come up with an open call, and the perfect age isn't necessarily something that falls under a feminist lens straight off the back. And this is like a very empowering and woman voice dominating story curated here by our jurors. So thank you, Lydia, for offering us this space. I think even themes like the male gaze that Sarah, you were just talking about, and Sharon mentioned before, like that is something that that didn't even cross my mind when we were thinking about this exhibition. So I think it's really, really strong that it still appears here and opens the conversation.
Yeah.
It's interesting. People have said you're brave, you're courageous, and I have wondered what in heaven's name that meant, because I don't think of it that way. Somehow or other, my son said, "You're exposing parts of your body we're not supposed to look at," but feet. And what I've loved about Lizzo lately is that she says, "My body is my body, and everybody's got one." you know, and to me, that's my answer. And what she's saying, of course, is that our bodies are to be looked at and enjoyed and not be ashamed of.
And they're all different and they're all the same.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
No.
No, but I love the self-portrait on the bed and how that was set up. That one. Because that's kind of the thing I was doing also, but it didn't, yeah, I just, the imagery of it is very meaningful to me.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I had been doing this other project of portraits of women, but then COVID happened and I couldn't go out to other people's homes to photograph them. And I immediately picked up my camera and started making pictures of myself. And it was my way to deal with all of the angst about the situation. And all of these images came flooding out of me. And the earlier images that I made were very much in the present day. And it was my house, and it was all very contemporary. But then, I don't know, I was really so upset with everything that was going on, and then the election and all the news and all. And so I started reading Middlemarch, which takes, George Eliot, mid-19th century, and I was completely enthralled with being in this other world. And it was just this way for me to escape out of the present day, which was so disturbing. And then I started making images of myself kind of where you couldn't tell what time it was, what present, was it present, is it past? And I was functioning somewhere in the middle, and it led to this whole body of work. This is one of the images, but a whole bunch of them where I'm sort of not really in the present day, and I make myself look I was I'm living 200 years ago. It's a complete escape. And that was kind of how I felt that I needed to express my feeling of solitude and isolation, which is upsetting, but it was also sort of a relief to kind of do this.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, you can probably get more from expressing it in this kind of context than in trying to express it directly. In now, you need the metaphor in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about how you set them up.
Just
and get them focused.
Tripod and a timer.
That's it? You're always getting them in focus? I have a tough time with that.
This is the most exquisite image I've seen that for me represents the incredible aloneness and the passage of time in the 15 months that I spent living in my house. It's just so archetypally brilliant. I am just delighted to be able to see it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Also, I don't know if Sharon, you and Sarah have been able to see the show, but Sharon's two images kind of flank Sarah's that are in the middle of a kind of an entryway into another room, and they're very stunning together. Which is pretty interesting.
I haven't been able to see, I mean, I saw mine through a door, but is there going to be a video sort of walkthrough of the whole thing, or?
Yes, and we are working on a virtual space on Art Steps.
Good.
So you can it's I don't know, virtual 3D walls, so you can walk through the space and see how everything is on there.
Cool, because I keep looking to see.
Yeah, and then maybe pretty soon. Yeah, so they're right behind me. If you can see my screen, there's a second room. So Sharon's are on the side, and then yours are.
That is cool. because I haven't seen that. And so you will let us know when that's up, right?
Yes, I will.
And if you do a closing, I will try to make it. I couldn't make it to the opening, but I will try.
Great.
When do you imagine the closing will be? Do you have a sense of the date?
It will definitely be June 18th.
Okay.
I haven't sent out a formal thing yet. I'm just waiting to see
Okay,
how
thank you.
COVID is, what kind of the plan will be. But I will send everyone an email with that.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on getting to that. I could not do the opening, but I really want to see the exhibition up in person.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Me too, but it's a long drive.
Yes, it is.
Somebody else is from Florida. That's not a drive, that's a fly. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone so much for this wonderful talk. This will be recorded and posted on our website and YouTube page tomorrow. So if you want to share that link out, it will be ready tomorrow. Thank you so much for this incredible talk and exhibition. It's really inspiring to be here. And I get to sit here every day and look at this. So thank you for having a good show for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.